Hello, lovely humans. I'm waiting for Victoria to pop on here. Today we have Victoria Evans official. Hi, honey. She just popped in. Yay, view. Trying to pin it. Is she in? Is she in? Waiting. Hello, hello.
Hi. I
How are
haven't seen
you?
you in ages, I feel like. I miss you, girl. Oh my
I
gosh.
know. How are you? I'm gonna pin this here.
I'm okay. I'm doing okay here. Yeah. Things are
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
How are things there? Are they like slowly getting back to normal or?
It's weird. It's like they just closed a big park yesterday, but then like restaurants are open and like social distancing. So it's like it seems very like push pull about things. It's very strange. Like beaches are still closed. There's like kind of like a 9 p.m. curfew kind of in place. But it's kind of like lenient. It's like it's kind of strange. It doesn't seem like this is the rules. It's like a bit like sprinkling of things here and there. So kind of just
That's
going
how it
with.
is. That's how it is here too. Why is this not pinning? This is annoying. Do you know how to like pin comments?
Uh, no.
Intuitive. And I keep spelling intuitive wrong. I'm like, okay, this is
Oh my
not
god, I do that
working.
all the time. I'm like, that's embarrassing on mine.
Post.
But like, it's so many little I's and U's and stuff. And
I'm
like,
literally just commenting on my own thing. Okay, anyways. Let's get started. So I'll do like a little intro for those of you that are new. My name is Laura Martin. I am an ex, you know, self-sabotaging, anxious, crazy lady teacher that escaped through drinking and masked all my energy and all of that, turned CEO of a now company that helps people suffering from anxiety and depression to heal using nutrition, which sounds like a plot twist, but because I remember not too long ago being masked in like that heavy weight of feeling I didn't even know it was anxiety and depression, but just feeling masked and like not knowing how to be in my body and always overdoing things and escaping and all that kind of stuff. And just self-sabotaging. And then fast forward to the life I have today that is fully in body, that is fully in flow, that just like feels fucking delicious. And it's a dream I couldn't even like put into words. And so the whole point of Happy Hour is to bring people that have really inspired me along that journey. And Victoria is one of them. And she's actually one of the guest lecturers within my online program. And the thing I love about Victoria is that she not only walks her talk, but she makes it fucking real. Like, it's not one of those things of just like, oh, like if you're craving this, eat broccoli. And it's like, no, I don't friggin' want that. And it's like, she is so fun and so engaging to learn from. And so that's why I wanted to bring her on here. So you guys can, I mean, I also just like wanted to dive deeper into her whole story and learn about her. And selfishly, it was just like, hi, can you come so I can interview you? So if you are someone that is, gut healing and just trying to heal in general, and you're looking to learn a bit more, maybe you've tried everything, maybe you're new to the whole subject, stay tuned because we're going to be diving into this. So, Victoria, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your love and your light with all of us. If you wanted to just introduce yourself to everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Like you messaged me, I was like, yes, I'm super excited about this. So yeah, my name is Victoria Evans. I'm a science-based intuitive eating coach. So I kind of take intuitive eating, which is really what I kind of describe as getting to a place of neutrality around food and your body, so you can actually tune in, listen to what your body wants, feel really good, and feel really empowered. It really is all about the feeling, not so much the look. When we're able to step into that space, everything kind of just lines up amazingly. And so I kind of take this different science-based approach. So I found basically I struggled a lot with depression, anxiety from a very young age, and I'm very open about it because I think it's important to have these kind of conversations. So I struggled, my first suicide attempt was when I was 16. My second one was after a sexual assault university when I was 21. And that has been a huge narrative in my life, like the depression, the anxiety. But conjoined with that was this idea that it would be solved if I was in a smaller body. We see all these before and after pictures. We see all these, the Instagram models, whatever it is, and they all look so happy. Their lives are so perfect. And I'd really convinced myself, you know, like all the pain in my life, everything would be solved if I just lost this weight, if I just looked a certain way. And so this kind of kicked off this really crazy journey from age 12, where my bulimia started. It was on and off. And then it kind of morphed into kind of like a binge eating. And then in university, though, it kind of was kept at bay because I was an athlete. I played NCAA volleyball in the States, even though I'm Canadian. And then after that assault, I basically put on a lot of weight, kind of affected myself with my own body. Then started at a Fortune 500 beauty company, working corporate. And essentially there, like, didn't fit into the company culture. No one would talk to me. I was sitting by myself at lunch. And again, the idea that like everything would be solved in a smaller body just became more and more reinforced in my mind. Once you kind of get that kind of an idea in there, especially one that is so reinforced with diet culture, it's hard to kind of get it out. So that kind of began my, you know, my journey there into this like downward spiral. And I went on Instagram, which is a great tool sometimes, but also can be really, really negative depending on how you use it. So I found the social media influencer with the best abs, most followers, and started her weight loss guarantee program, 12 weeks, and basically shed a whack ton of weight super, super quickly. And it was really confusing because it kind of felt like it was happiness because of the compliments and the attention I got. But it wasn't actually, it was empty. And then my journey in recovery, after having realized like I was never going to attain happiness in a smaller body, was chasing smoke, again, kind of came back to this really science-based approach. So not just rooting it in the emotions and just kind of like love yourself more, because at that point I was just a basket case and I was so depressed and didn't feel like there was a reason for anything. So I really had to dig into how is my brain working, and I know for you, like how your gut is working, like really kind of unraveling it a little bit to be like, I'm not broken. I just have to kind of understand what's kind of going on there and educate myself a little bit so that I'm more empowered. And so I was able to take such a unique kind of approach, looking at how our brain works, you know, different neurotransmitters, serotonin, whatever it is, and really start to dig into that. And from that space, I was able to really heal myself in recovery, and then furthermore, start a coaching program, basically teaching women everything I learned on that journey.
That's incredible. Like so much, but so much of that like resonates because I mean, I know if it's resonating with me, right? Like there has to be so many other people because there's just two of us right now. And the fact that like what we do when we are suffering, right? When we have abuse, when we have trauma, when we just don't feel like when we're born, that's trauma one. But what we do is we take it out on our body, right? And it's the one thing that we control. And in that, as we grow older, we lose the trust within ourselves, right? And so then we start to grapple with, I mean, God, like when I think of my children moving forward, like, because at least I didn't have social media as much when we were younger, right? Like that wasn't so much, but as we grew older and got to this control and this manipulation and life started to happen, this is where we took it out. So navigating through, what was kind of your entry point into recovery? Like how are you like, ooh, this is not right. Like how do I, you know?
So I had a rock bottom moment. Basically, I had an extra handful of trail mix, which wasn't allowed. Everything was weighed. Everything was, you know, had to be perfect. And so I had an extra handful of trail mix at like 3 a.m. Like I was so hungry. I was lying in bed. I kind of like woke up with hunger pangs, stumbled into my kitchen and had trail mix. And I was like, kind of just like that, half asleep, kind of like eating it. And I realized what I'd done. I freaked out. I was like, oh my God, I can't go back to sleep right now. I have to burn this off. So it was 3 a.m. And I was like bawling on the floor of my apartment in Montreal. It was like pitch black out. I think it was like early summer. And I was like crying so hard because I'm like, I can't go back to bed right now. But I know I don't want to go and like run. But I knew I had to. Like I knew I couldn't let those calories sit. So I basically like crawled to my closet at 3 a.m. and pulled on my running gear, like my hat, remember like my pink armband, headphones, everything. And I still remember like closing the door to my apartment and just like that thought and just feeling so heavy and just being like this, I have to go do this right now. Like I hate feeling so controlled and like I have no power over my own mind. Like I felt like I was just a victim of myself and like someone had to come and save me from me. And so I was running 30 kilometers up the mountain there in Montreal, Mount Royal, like finished basically at the top of the mountain at 6 a.m. And like the cars were lighting up my face, like the headlights of the cars, and I was like crying and I was so embarrassed and like, but I knew I had to do it. And I got to the top and I just like remember standing there and just being so done. Like my hair was falling out. I didn't have my period anymore. I was miserable. Like I was in this small body that I thought the solution was, you know, for everything. Like this was it. Like like what I'd aspired for since I was 12 when like different eating disorders had kicked off, I was in that body and yet I was still miserable. And it was this earth shattering moment where I knew, one, that I was never going to lose enough weight to be happy. Two, that I couldn't do it alone. Because up until that point, I thought like I could just do it on my own. I thought I could just fix it. Like I got myself a mess. But I realized like an eating disorder is a mental illness, right? It has nothing to actually do with our body. And with mental illnesses, we're not always thinking straight. We're not always thinking ourselves. It's so important to bring in other people and have that support, and as well having these conversations to talk about it and normalize the discussion a little bit, because, you know, I think mental health has come a long way, but something like an eating disorder, especially something like bulimia or binge eating even, is still very taboo and no one really talks about it as much. And so opening up that conversation, because eating disorders really thrive in shame and secrecy, and you can bring that light to it and bring that conversation, it alleviates so much that allows us to step into recovery. So I had that moment at the top of the mountain, and I came down and I called an eating disorder hotline for the first time. And I literally just like called this lady for like, it was like 4 hours. I was just bawling and crying, and like I couldn't even get the words out. I was crying so hard because I felt my entire life I had been trying to hold up this perfect picture, like this perfect, everything's fine, everything's great, like Tori's whatever, she's just really motivated. And I kind of just really let those walls just like fall down. And the cool thing was, you know, when we're able to be vulnerable and show how imperfect we are, it actually allows us to connect with other people. So the more I was able to start talking to other people and share my story, that connection that I thought that was, you know, solely needed or solely going to happen in a smaller body was actually happening because I was showing my vulnerability and other people were actually able to connect with me.
I think that is so powerful, right? And like, it's horrible. I mean, even like connecting that you were like going up a mountain, that's just symbolism, right? Of like, oh, I'm climbing this mountain and then I get to the top and I'm like, nope, it's a lonely battle, and being vulnerable and doing that. So like, I applaud you for reaching out, because I know so many people, they're usually forced into it, right? Like it's not something they're willingly to be like, I admit I have a problem. Like this is step one of the program, right?
Yeah.
And so I mean, you were at the top of the mountain, right? And you made the phone call, and the next steps after that, how were you able to step into that vulnerability? Because I mean, what I've noticed through coaching, through my own healing, through my own recovery, is just that vulnerability and that, not submission, what's the word that I'm looking for, but just surrender. The surrender of like, I am in this and I need to be vulnerable, and this whole fear based of being vulnerable, right? So what was that kind of like for you to continue taking those steps every single day? Like you were very vulnerable, and like that's why I love everything that you do, because I'm listening to you and I'm like, oh yes, like you are human. Thank you for not telling me like all the sugar coated candy shit, but like, yeah. So how do you embrace your vulnerability?
Yeah, and it's not like this easy. It wasn't like I was like, okay, now I'm in recovery and everything's great. Like it's a journey, right? And something like recovery, it's choosing it again and again and again, but it gets easier each time you make the choice.
Yeah.
And so for me though, like I felt like it was my battle. Like this, you know, depression, anxiety was my battle. Like, and everything was just on my shoulders. I felt like I was literally under a giant boulder, and it was suffocating me. And then I reached out to the user hotline because I literally was like, I'm about to die. Like I literally felt in the soul of my being, I was like, something needs to shift because I cannot do this. Like I can't do it. And so I made that call, and all of a sudden it felt like someone was like slowly rolling that rock off me a little bit. And then I was like, oh, that's a lot lighter. Like I was able to kind of offload that a little bit. Things that I've been carrying around for 10 years, I was able to kind of just pass off a little bit to someone else. And that stuck with me, that feeling. And then she, on the phone, she was like, well, let me, set you up with a therapist. And I was like, okay, cool. And so it just felt like these little bits of hope were slowly entering my life, where before it was, everything just seemed like hopeless. Everything seemed like this is the end of the world. And so attaching yourself to those little bits of happiness, little bits of fun, the little bits of inspiration that kind of can get you slowly going, that was really what helped me. And so for me, it was like, then I was like, okay, now I'm going to go talk to a therapist about it. And again, it was kind of like they rolled the boulder off me a little bit more. And instead of it just me being, a battle that I was fighting myself, I was kind of able to bring in this whole army. And slowly, the more people I told, the easier it became, the more I talked about it. Till eventually I was like, even talking to my mom, I still get almost emotional talking about it. I remember when I told her, and I just was bawling my eyes out. I was in the car and like just I couldn't even talk, and I was just apologizing and apologizing and apologizing. It's like, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. She's like, why are you apologizing? She's like, I'm so happy you told me, like, and she gave me a big hug, and like, it was just like this moment where I realized that reaching out and being vulnerable, it's not a weakness, it's actually a strength. And I built my entire life trying to be this strong woman. I don't need anyone, you know, like, it's weak if I ask for help, blah, blah, blah. When I realized, like, it takes such strength to say, hey, I'm struggling right now, I need some help. And not to mention, I thought I was burdened by doing that, when in reality, I was being the burden when I wasn't reaching out because I wasn't myself, you know, like when I'm lying in bed, or when I'm, you know, passing out at 2 a.m. from exhaustion and working out 6 hours a day, ignoring people's phone calls, not saying I'm going to go to the restaurant, canceling plans with people. I'm a burden on that friendship, and they think there's something wrong that they've done, when in reality it's me. And so, you know, when we're vulnerable, not only does it give them permission to show up and be vulnerable and deepen that connection as well, but it really just gives us the opportunity to, you know, just be ourselves and connect and just release so much that we've had pent up. And also, you feel friggin' awesome. Like, I know if someone reached out to me and they're just like, hey, I'm going through a really hard time, do you have 5 minutes to talk? I feel like the fucking chosen one. I'm like, you chose me for that. You know, like, humans like to feel needed, and when we're able to connect with people, and I think as well, it's important to assess where the other person is at. You know, it's important to be like, hey, can you hold space if I talk to you right now? Because I've also had people kind of come to me and I'm like, I was struggling, and they try to put more on me, and I'm just like, oh, it's a bit hard. So I think as well, always kind of asking and prefacing like, hey, you know, like, where are you at right now? How are you doing? Something I want to talk about. Could you hold space for it as well?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in that. Like, so much, but like so much. So like something I wrote down was, one, okay, vulnerability, yes, but like two, one of the main things I heard from you is the identification within that process. And it's like losing your, and not, it's not even losing it because you never had it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you put your identity within this body size or these attachments or all these kind of things, and that, as humans, that's what we do, right? That's our success factor, that's our kind of thing. And then as it starts to unravel, or we're not succeeding, or we have a handful of trail mix, that's when we are like, oh shit, so what do I do now? And when you can sit in that and kind of, you know, that's the process. And I think that might be coming up for a lot of people in this isolation time and in this corona time, is like, oh, what is my identification? Because it can't be work, it can't be fitness because I can't go to the gym. Who am I at my core? And so kind of, what was that moment looking like for you when you sat down and you were like, who am I? Like, how was that experience of unearthing that for you?
I think it's important to, I think it was Brene Brown talking about this as well, but like, really, especially right now, give yourself that time to grieve. Grieve the life you thought you were going to have. For myself, grieve the body and this idea that I was going to be happy. But like, we have all kind of lost something in this process. We've thought something was going to happen. We kind of attached ourselves to a little bit, and then everything shifted. And it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be upset. Like, I'm frustrated. I'm angry. I'm going through those stages of mourning. It was with my body, you know, years ago, but now it's really with this life, you know, with the situation we're in, and it's okay to feel that way. And I think a lot of people are judging themselves because maybe they're not a frontline worker. How should I be upset when this person, you know, my families are all first line workers back in Canada. You know, like, how dare I be complaining or mad that, you know, the beaches are closed here when they have to go in and do this. But like, all feelings are valid, right? And we have to give ourselves an opportunity to mourn that life we thought we were going to have. And the more that we judge that, the harsher it is. And so first step is kind of like allowing yourself to mourn. If it's the body, if it's whatever it is, the idea, the life you thought you're going to have, let yourself be sad for that. That's okay. I know I literally had like days where I was crying that I was no longer going to have abs. Like, it literally was just like me.
Same. I still do that. Like, I just went to the beach this weekend and I was like, my abs are gone. And I was like, get the fuck over it. Your period's back.
Yeah, but it's like, it's still such it was so hard grained, right? It's so in there. So letting yourself kind of mourn that, but then it's so important to develop yourself outside of these factors. So I talk about it crowding out. So I talk about it with food, basically, but like, a lot of the time when it comes to food, body, even a career, we've made our life so hyper focused on something. We're so zoom lens in. So for me, like, having abs looking a certain way, that, or even if you think about it like a bank, like, if I have all my investments in my body, or if all my investments in my work, or all my investments in this, what happens if the stock market crashes? Which actually it did. Like, it's what's happening. you know, if I can't go to the gym or if I'm fired, then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I have nothing left. You know, it was all taken from me. And so it's important to kind of spread out those investments and, you know, make sure your life has that really holistic feel. So like adding in creativity things, deepening your values, you know, looking at what brings you joy. And I always ask my clients, like, what would like 5-year-olds you want to do right now? Like bringing in that fun. I think a lot of the time in recovery, especially right now, we don't let ourselves have fun. We don't let ourselves kind of like bring in pleasure, having joy. So like, oh, it's a difficult situation. We shouldn't be laughing. We shouldn't be happy. But a lot of the time, like things with mental health or eating disorders, it's really feeling like we are depriving ourselves of that fun. We are not worthy of that fun. When we start to like dabble in it, add in more things, crowd our life out, disperse those investments among different things, people, nature, movement, whatever it is, dig into those values, all of a sudden we're like, we have this zoom out picture on our life so that no longer we're hyper focused on just the body or whatever it is. And then if things shift, and because they always will, that's a constant in life, is change. We're not so attached to it that our life seems like it's over.
Yeah. I mean, I find that to be so true. So, like, that's what's come up for me in quarantine has been, I've started taking dance lessons at lunchtime. And it's actually helped with that like lonely like binging that would happen in the evening. And it was like, oh, I just needed a dopamine hit, like some offset in the day because you get so into your work, you just need something. But we forget that it's not like we always want to turn towards food. We always want to turn towards something else. But it's like, are you reading books? Are you doing something outside of the plate? Do you have a life that you're not identifying with? Like, I just go to work. I just work out. I just do this. I'm the health girl. I'm this. Like, it's like all these different things. And it's like, but who are you really? Like, if those, all that stripped away, who are you at your core? Right. And are you okay with that?
Yes.
And that's the hard question to answer, right? Like, are you okay with that? And then what are you going to do about it? You know?
Yeah. And especially right now with quarantine, I feel like a lot of people are being faced with that question and they don't want to look at it. So they're turning to food, like you said, to get that dopamine hit, to get that serotonin, just to get some kind of a high basically off the food, or maybe that's with alcohol or drugs or whatever it is, to just kind of numb out and buffer against that feeling of who am I. But when we consciously and intentionally dig into that, instead of it being like this last resort, like something we're avoiding, it can actually be this really cool space, and this space where you feel really empowered in, and it's exciting. And like, even if it's reading a new book about a topic, or like Googling like how to do paintings, like whatever it is, but like giving yourself a little bit of fun, a little bit of inspiration, to just give yourself that bit of hope and kind of define yourself by more than just one thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think one of the best things during this time, and what I'm seeing in my community, and that I'm sure you're seeing in your membership as well, is the concept of when suffering, we think we're alone in it, right? And so what you've said is, as soon as you start talking about it, you're like, oh, I'm not alone. Oh, I'm not alone. Here's the one step. Here's this all the kind of stuff. And so maybe something you can kind of touch on right now, since we are in the middle of COVID, and a big thing that's coming up right now is I'm eating more than I'm used to doing, and I'm doing this, but no one's talking. I mean, they're posting about it, but no one's actually talking about it. Being like, before I jumped on this call, my hand was in the granola jar, and I was like, you're about to jump on the line with like an intuitive eating coach right now, and you're like, me. Like, and I was like, okay, let's tune that back. Let's bring this in. What's happening? So kind of touch on that. Like, you have this science-based approach, and that's what I love, because like knowledge is power, right? But how can people use that during this time when they are stuck at home and the fridge is right there and they are stress eating, and other than like being like, it's okay, like how can they actually move forward in it so that they feel at peace?
Yeah. So you gotta, like, the first step is, Ron, you touched on it, is not judging yourself around it, because our bodies are really smart, right? Our brain has evolved to avoid pain as a survival mechanism. And so if you are in pain right now, and a lot of people confuse boredom, like they think boredom is just boredom, but usually there's kind of an underlying thing there of the insecurity of slowing down, needing to be doing something, all of that. So the first step is kind of understanding like your body's trying to help you. It's being your friend right now. So if you're reaching towards food because it thinks that you're in pain, it thinks that you're struggling, it thinks that you're stressed, it's trying to almost like self-medicate you and help you out. So don't meet that with a bunch of shame. Meet it with curiosity. Being like, okay, I find myself reaching for the granola bar right now, or the granola right now. What does that mean? What's going on? Taking a step to kind of tune in there. So I know for myself, if I am, for example, if it's like late at night, I'm gonna get lonely. I know that happens. Like, and I have like, what do I do about it? So even for myself, like I've created like I will create little lists with clients, like what are other things we can do? And so a lot of the time it's even just priming our brain. So our brain basically works off the reticular activating system. Whatever we focus on, we create more of in our life. So if I'm able to spend more time like focusing on things I can do in those moments that actually make me feel good. So for example, like a lot of the time, like, well, if we're feeling lonely, for example, we want that feeling of connection, oxytocin, feeling of a bond, right? Things that give you oxytocin, taking a warm shower, petting an animal, calling a friend, meditating on the people who you love, giving yourself a self massage, like all those things, and like creating that list and allowing yourself that, you know, that like, okay, this is what's coming up for me, but then like giving yourself that action step and even like thinking about it away. It's like if your brain knows where like the exit sign is kind of thing, it's going to relax a little bit. So when I have a little bit more action that is prepped and sort of like preparatory instead of kind of a reaction. What's the word like for? Not preparatory. What's the word you say when you say you want to like
active as opposed to reactive?
Yeah, active.
Preparing.
Yeah. Have a bit more active about it. So even like, yeah, so if I know when I'm like really angry, I usually eat this. Okay, what is the step for that? Like digging into the different emotions. Again, understanding like they're coming up for a reason. So trying not to even just avoid them by taking like a shower. Like maybe you do go take a warm shower to get that feeling of oxytocin, but then kind of digging into, okay, where is that feeling coming up? Why is it coming up? Because if we're always shoving things down with food, basically, we're never actually looking at the core issue there. Another thing I would suggest maybe doing is doing a lot of check-ins. So a lot of people kind of spend the whole day just such in a tunnel vision, so on the go, so on the run, but they don't actually check in with themselves until it's like 11 o'clock at night, and they're just like, whoa. They finally sit down, they're finally like, shit, what happened today? Oh my God, tomorrow's a new day, I'll be better, blah, blah, blah. So I encourage my clients to schedule in little reminders to their phone, and little notifications that come up maybe every and it just being like, hey, how are you feeling right now? What's going on? Checking in. Or even like for my clients in recovery, like quote, like little recovery quotes that really resonate with them. So it's always in the forefront of your mind. It's always coming up. Sometimes it can just help you snap out of it. But I really compare it to almost like if you are juggling throughout the day and like each new problem or new thing that happens to you, it's like your new thing tossed in the air. And then we get to the end of the day and we have like all these things and we're just like, like food, and all just like falls to the ground. Versus allowing yourselves the opportunity to check in and also giving yourselves permission. So I will see my clients like say like, I'm allowed to feel sad, I'm allowed to feel angry, I'm allowed to rest. Giving yourself permission releases a lot of that resistance, which causes that suffering. So those check-ins, if you're able to kind of be like, this happened, and that's like, okay, look at it, this is how I feel about it, put it down. This happened, this is how I feel, put it down. But at the end of the day, we don't have so many things in the air that we don't even know how to cope with it.
Yeah, totally agree. And I mean, so something that like on the family dinner chat I did, like cooking demo last night, was talking about burnout, because a lot of my students have been like, oh, well, I'm working from home now. And this happens to me all the freaking time. Is like, I'm so in the flow that all of a sudden, like I eat breakfast at like 8 in the morning. And then like I forget because I'm so in the flow to actually eat until like 2. And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm so fucking hungry. And like all this kind of stuff. And so what I'm gauging from what you just said is being a little bit more mindful. Like I know that happens. So I set an alarm at 11:58 is when it goes off, to be like, hey girl, you hungry yet? Like we're still out of whatever, work is great. I get that. But like being a little bit more active as opposed to reactive, and being a little bit more mindful. And those are kind of the tools, right? Like there's a lot of science, there's a lot of all this stuff. You can be like all that. And it's just like, but just tune in. Like see what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And as well, like I find a lot of people will get really upset with themselves because they'll be overeating or whatever it is. Then I'm like, okay, like, are you eating enough, right? So like they'll, for example, like they haven't had breakfast, they're on the Zoom calls with their boss, they're just having a couple cups of coffee in the morning, they're go. Then it gets to like 1 p.m., 2 p.m., and they haven't eaten yet. Then they end up eating all the things in the kitchen as they're making their lunch, and then they're having a snack after. They're like, oh my God, what is wrong with me? I can't believe I did this again, blah, blah, blah. And if you think of like those marbles that are like, they plink back and forth, do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So like hunger is on this side, and like over like being like, so like hunger scale, like 0, like I'm about to pass out hungry, so full, I'm going to fall over because I'm just like, whoa, my God, I can't even move. Like the hungry you get, so like 2, 3 p.m., whatever it is for you, like you're pulling that ball back, you're like extreme hunger, it's going to like shoot the ball to the other side and then you're going to way overeat. It's a pendulum, exactly.
Pendulum, yes.
Yeah, I know what we're looking for is, thank you so much, pendulum thing. Other side. So when you're able to kind of like have those notifications, those check-ins, you're able to keep it kind of in that like just starting to get hungry, tuning into my body, really mindful. And when you're starting to honor that hunger when it is coming up, it's so much easier to stop, slow down, be more mindful when you're eating as well.
I kind of want to touch on that subject though, because for my recovery, it was one of those things where I convinced myself I wasn't hungry. So I was doing like this crazy, like 16, 18, 24, like I'd just be like, I'm just not hungry. And then I would have like an apple and I'm like, I'm good for the day. And it's like, I genuinely, it wasn't the satisfaction of like, oh, I'm not eating or I'm eating very little. Like, yeah, okay, some days it was that way. But it was genuinely that I was like, I'm just not hungry. I'm like, I was so out of line. So how is it, why is it? What is that kind of mechanism? I know it's like rooted in my anxiety and whatever, but I know a lot of people do feel that way. Like I can think of 5 of my friends that are like, I'm just not hungry. And I'm like, that's bullshit.
Yeah. I think it's a kind of a couple different things depending on the mental space around it. Like there's a lot of studies with, for example, like anorexia, people who, when they are not eating and they're choosing to suppress that hunger, even if consciously, subconsciously, they get a feeling of high off of it. They have a feeling of control, a feeling of power. So even if you're not consciously like, I'm not even hungry, like whatever it is, you're just like, I can't feel the hunger. There's a part of you that gets that little hit of feel good about myself, feeling in control, feeling powerful over my own hunger. So that can sometimes be a component of it because it's a lot of the time we discount how powerful our minds are, how powerful our brain is. And so even with clients, like working deep into just like giving yourself permission to feel that hunger. Because again, our brain fears things that is unfamiliar, that it doesn't see a lot of the time. So if I've spent this long doing intermittent fasting and telling myself I don't get hungry till 1, and whether that be like true, your body doesn't recognize it, whatever it is, you're still going to have suppressed that. You're still going to, you know, brain is saying, yeah, don't put on those hunger cues right now because we're not going to eat. So you're really kind of shoving it down. So really giving yourself like, and I talk to my clients, like I'm allowed to honor my hunger cues. It is safe for me to eat. It is safe for me to blah, blah, blah. But your brain, especially your primitive brain, is always asking the question, am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? So if I'm spending the day in a state of anxiety, and I think as well, like potential weight gain is unsafe, I'm like adding unsafe to unsafe to unsafe. There's no way that I'm going to let myself feel those hunger cues. Versus I am here now, I am safe, engaging in other things that get you to that parasympathetic, the rest, digest, and heal. So like whether it be like a meditation, whether it be yoga, whether it be coloring, whatever, box breathing, like there's so many different ways, but slowing down, releasing a lot of that anxiety so we're able to tune in, those hunger cues are able to come up because it feels safe, being super intentional with the language behind it, as well as digging into the reason why it began with, right? So there's a reason why we want to change our body, lose weight, you know, control whatever it is, because so much about, you know, eating disorders, disordered eating is the aspect of control and thinking that we have it basically. And so digging into what that is, because, you know, the need for control is the need for security, and the more security you need, the more insecure we are. So what are we insecure about? What do we need to dive into there? And kind of really look at that, because a lot of people will just blow past it and think it's all willpower and motivation, when at the core of it is our brain that we need to kind of rewire a little bit.
100%. And it's all control, right? Like and that's why I think right now your work is so important, because we are in a moment that is uncontrollable. And as humans, we love to manipulate situations. We love to escape and, you know, just be like, this is the one thing I can do. It's my body, it's my food, it's this. And then we're at home and we're feeling like we are powerless and that we can't control this because our fridge is right there and all this kind of stuff. So it makes sense that like mental health and all these kind of things, and at the root of it, it is like, even when like my naturopath, right, she was like, oh, like, do you want to talk about how your depression is linked to all this stuff? And I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And like, you don't even realize, because you're so used to like, oh, this is my coping mechanism for my anxiety, that you're not even identifying with the fact like, oh yeah, the root of that's anxiety. Like, that's depression. It's this insecurity that's kind of rising up and navigating through that. So what are some, because I know you do have to leave, you said like 15 minutes-ish, 10 minutes, jump with some clients. So thank you. What are some steps for people to gain back control of self, especially during this time? Like, in all aspects, right? Like of getting to this point of, you know, you're glowing and flowing and you have all this. So what are kind of the tools that you use on a daily basis to trust yourself again?
Yeah, so the first thing would be to just try to establish a very gentle kind of morning slash evening routine. Because I feel like it almost has like a little bit of bookends onto the day, and it gives us a sense of calm. And again, our brain likes familiarity. It likes knowing what's going to happen. So if we're able to just add in a little bit of that sense of control, that sense of familiarity, and especially things that serve us, not only does it help from the sense that our brain can be like, oh, this is what we're doing today, this is the new normal, but also it can be things that actually help your mental health, make you feel good. So kind of like an additional layer onto that. So I've been getting more into like stretching in the morning and meditating and journaling. Like that's
And
kind of
balancing
like,
on your head.
and balancing on my head. I'm getting more into like headstands lately. Yeah, but like whatever that looks like for you, like having a bit of a morning routine, especially right now when a lot of things do feel like, what can I do? What is my control? Like what are the little things? And as well, don't make it this like 36-step elaborate routine, because I find people, and then they'll fall off of it one day and they'll be like, screw it, like I already messed it up, I'm not gonna go back to it. And that's kind of like the perfectionist likes to do. We like to make like big, huge objectives. We feel really good, get the dopamine hit when we make it. And then if we fall off it, we're just like, well, of course. Like, now we're done. We start again next Monday or whatever it is. Versus like, you're going to mess up. You missed days. It's not a big deal. It's not even so much the, like the benefit you get from doing it, which is awesome. It's kind of like a cherry on top, but it's knowing like taking that time for you and having that self-compassion. Like it all comes back to feeling good. You feel good, you do more things to make you feel good. And so practicing those little moments of joy, those little moments that kind of anchor you in, and as well, like adding in more fun. So not even necessarily just like a Netflix thing, but like what is something you actually want to do? Is it putting on your favorite playlist and like dancing around for 20 minutes? Is it calling up like some people online, like you're on FaceTime and like playing an escape room game? Is it downloading new like games on the app, like on your app on your phone? The other day I went on the App Store and I downloaded like 5 new games. I was like, I haven't played a game in so long, but like it's so fun. Yeah, like I just like didn't occur to me, and I was just like, oh right. So I'd say like adding in a morning night routine, being in communication, and then looking for the moments of joy and like adding them in. Really asking yourself like, what would a 5-year-old version of you want to do right now? And then being like, yeah, like what is that? Do I want to do a handstand? Yeah, kind of. Okay, cool. Let's do that.
Yeah. Well, because I think like such a big one, right? Like is we don't have, I think going back to our 5-year-old self is so key, especially with intuitive eating, right? Like we stopped
Yeah.
on your phone, we played, we did all the poop
Yeah.
around, whatever thing. But something that like could be coming up, and I know you probably face this roadblock a lot, is just like you're like, well, I can't intuitively eat because I won't stop. And like I don't have that trust, I don't have this kind of stuff. So how do you navigate through that kind of roadblock? And that, I mean, it is a misconception. So
Yeah, so the funny thing is, and especially when someone mentioned to me intuitive eating, and they're like, yeah, you just like eat whatever you want. I'm just like, are you crazy? If I'm allowed to eat whatever I want, I'm gonna eat everything. Like I'm gonna eat everything. Because at this point, I was so restrictive. Like nothing was on limits. My house was empty because I didn't trust myself around any foods, because I was in such a state of restriction, scarcity, hunger, that obviously when I'm around food, I'm gonna like lose my mind. If you think about, I was comparing to clients, like if you have a dog you haven't fed in 2 days and he breaks into the cabinets and like eats all of the food, could you be mad at that dog? No, because he's friggin' hungry. And yet we do it ourselves. We're like, I'm on day 2 of a diet and I've self-sabotage and what is wrong with me and blah, blah, blah. And like self-sabotage is self-protection, right? Binging is a response to restriction. And a lot of people confuse, are like, oh yeah, but like I'm getting enough food. Yeah, but are you mentally restricting? Like, are you telling yourself, I'm not allowed to have this food? Like, I'm so guilty for having this food. This is off limits. So I know for myself, like even, back in university, I wasn't under eating in this restriction sense. Like I was getting an adequate amount of food, but I'd labeled everything as good and bad. So like I always had to eat on, I always had to be perfect in that regard. And anytime I varied from that, I was just like, oh, screw it, I might as well go all out now. I've already ruined my eating for the day, blah, blah, blah. Or even like the emotional sensory restriction. So like not letting myself emotionally express myself, thinking it's weak, thinking it's not allowed, whatever it is. And then eventually, having so many things in the air that I need to turn to food to try to release it, which doesn't really work. But in my mind, that was the only coping mechanism I had. Or even like a lot of times, sometimes even we'll be overeating and binging, we'll start to work through that. Maybe we're eating enough, maybe we stop leaving things sometimes, but we're almost addicted to that feeling of feel good. So especially if you're suffering from something like depression, anxiety, when you flood your body with all those feel good, like neurotransmitters, things when you eat certain foods, like for example, chocolate or peanut butter, you kind of almost become addicted to that rush, that addicted to that numbness. So I know for myself, like even when I was eating enough food, like later in the evening, my body had almost had this like Pavlovian response. Like the trigger was like, today was really stressful, I'm overwhelmed, blah, blah, blah. The activity was like eating a huge amount of food that was high sugar, high calorie. And then the reward was feeling really good, kind of numbing out for those few minutes, not worrying about my problems. So I think it can kind of, the sense of restriction than binging, it can be different levels of restriction that people kind of don't always look into. But the core of it is giving yourself that full permission to eat, giving yourself the opportunity to process your emotions. We kind of talked about a few of them with the routines and stuff, but giving yourself the opportunity to, like, through the permission to process emotions, adding in more fun, those feel goods, that your body isn't looking for that outlet in the sense of food, and is obviously eating enough food because restriction, or binging is the response to restriction. But knowing that as well, moving through that, it takes a little bit of time. And, you know, intuitive eating community, they talk about it as like that honeymoon period. So there's that little bit of that period at the beginning as you're shifting into intuitive eating, where sometimes it can feel a little bit out of control, feel a little bit scary, because all of a sudden you're going from nothing is allowed to everything's allowed. And your brain is kind of like a kid in a candy store. It's like, oh my God, we can have everything. And that can be kind of scary. And so again, that's kind of why I work with my clients, to really help bridge that gap, especially if they're struggling going from extreme hyper restriction to intuitive eating. It can seem like a big leap going from nothing's on limits to everything's on limits. So giving different tools and kind of techniques to help bridge that gap as well.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Is like, we think intuitive eating is like, oh, I'm going to go ham on the cheese and chocolates all day long. And like, maybe at first, sure, like because you couldn't have them. But after a while, you're going to be like, yeah, this makes me feel like shit. And we forget that intuitive eating means doing things that feel good. Like,
yes.
That's
Exactly.
what it is. And like, you're gonna quickly find out that if all you eat is chicken and or chocolate and cheese, you're not gonna feel too good. Like, maybe at first, but you're gonna be like, my body can't move. Like, I don't really like it. You know?
Exactly. It's
so I know you have to go in a few minutes. So I want to ask you 3 last questions, and then you can drop all the goodies so people can come and join your beautiful membership and everything that you do. So one question. First question is, what does happiness mean to you?
Ooh, happiness means, this is going to sound like a very bizarre answer, but like, honestly, my happiness levels are directly related to my sleep levels. So
honey, yes.
Getting a good night's sleep. Like yesterday I did not get enough sleep. I was up early for a retreat and my mental health took a huge hit. I was struggling. I was in bed. I was just like, whoa. So a lot of it has to do with getting enough sleep for me, to be honest.
Oh, I love that one though. That's a new one that I didn't even think of. I'm like, same though.
Like literally, at my old coach, he was just like, I would be like super negative and messaging him, and then I'll be like, can you notice I have this like a negative stream of thoughts? Can you just ask me how much sleep I got? Because I genuinely forget that was the reason every single time. See how she became like, oh, that's what it is. Like, your eating habits are going to change because your body's going to be seeking to have higher calorie, high sugar foods to kind of fill in for that lack of energy. You're going to feel like lethargic, so then your brain is going to be like, let's not move, which is going to compound on it. So like, sleep is huge.
Yeah. Exactly. Good one. What are 3 words that you would give to your younger self for advice?
Ooh. 3 words? Oh, that's hard. Individual. Oh my gosh. I was like, I need to prep for this one. I would say, like, enough, as in, like, you are enough. Like, not trying to, like, more. Slow down. I always thought my entire life, like, if I get to the end of, like, this, then I'll be happy, and this will be happy. And it was just this constant rat race. And, I'd say loved. I feel like I didn't feel that love, but it wasn't because it necessarily wasn't there. It's because I thought it wasn't there, so I wasn't looking for it. It was there.
Yeah, that was a good one.
A hard one. A hard question.
I like it. I like it. So enough, slow down, and loved. Good. And then what is one word you would use to describe your current state of being?
Someone asked me this other day, alignment.
Mm,
I feel
I
very
love it.
aligned. Yesterday when I didn't get enough sleep, I could have given you a completely different answer, like 8.5 hours last night, which was like even a bit more than I normally do, and I feel very in alignment today, very in the flow.
Good. Perfect. Well, thank you so much. This was so fucking informative. I love it so much. You're such a little gem. Tell people how they can find you and what they can do with you and all the gloriness.
Yeah. So find me on Instagram. So it's at Victoria Evans Official. I post a ton of content there. And I have my monthly membership program, so I go really deep into different topics. I've done one on like binging, overeating, food cravings, body confidence. June is going to be on emotional eating, so a different thing each month. So that's on my website, www.victoriaevansofficial.com, as well as my one-on-one coaching program if you want to go a bit deeper. You can apply for that. We can work together in a more intimate setting and heal your relationship with food. I want to have a Facebook group as well. A intuitive eating support group for badass women. So if you just
I love it.
group, it'll come up. But yeah.
It's so fitting. And if you guys like go over to a page, she has like these dances. Like it's just fun to fucking watch you live your life. Like you can tell that you are so in love with the, not just like, yes, your body is important, of course, but like you just love life. Like it's so cool to see. And it's so like, oh, love it so much. But thank you so much for sharing your light with all of us and all that you do, because it is very much needed in this world.
I cry. I was like, send me that recording of that last bit. It's gonna play out as my alarm clock.
All right, sweetheart. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.